Hey Josh, it's SILCA here. Talk today about packing up your bike for travel. So I've got my my awesome 51 custom bike here packed up or ready to pack up on the Thule work stand that comes with the Thule packing case. This is probably my favorite one on the market right now. Just a solid case, and this feature is pretty excellent. So we're going to get it set up and ready to go, and so we're going to show you a couple tips and tricks. Some pro tips, we'd call them, for those who do a lot of travel with bikes. My number one is to start with a clean bike. This one really cannot be overemphasized, that packing a dirty bike and then unpacking a dirty bike, it just leaves a ton of margin for error, for damage of fasteners. It makes everything more difficult and slow, and trust me, when you get where you're going, you're going to want to get your bike built up as quickly as possible so you can get on it. So if you can, clean the bike, hose, bucket, all of that, super proper. If not, we love these gear wipes. I think our customers love these gear wipes. I would start gear wiping everything down, and then be sure to pack some single pack gear wipes so that when you are ready to repack your bike to come back home, you can wipe it down again, get all the dirt and grime and sweat from your travel riding off of it. So I'm gonna start with a gear wipe, get it all wiped down, and then we'll go to the next step. All right, so we've wiped our bike down. We've got it clean. You see I've already got the pedals off on this one, ready to store away. And let's get the other accessories off the bike. This guy has this awesome IMPERO frame pump. And one of my tips and tricks with if you have an IMPERO frame pump or any frame pump, they're great to travel with. This is a great way to inflate your tires once you get there. Another good option is our own Viaggio travel pump, a travel floor pump that'll pack up nicely in the bottom of the bag. But these work awesome for your travel bike, or if you have a bike with couplers. Frame pumps are hard to beat, and you have it with you on the road when you need it. The beauty of the SILCA frame pump is that it comes in this packing tube, and the top of the packing tube just happens to be the perfect diameter. You can see I've already cut this one to make yourself a nice little headset spacer. When you go ahead and get the handlebars off to get the bike packed, you can use that spacer to hold everything nice and snug during travel, so that there's no risk of it coming apart, and you're not getting the bearing races sliding against the steer tube of the fork. So just sort of a fun little tip for that. Now, other accessories. Let's get our computer off. So we've got our beautiful, expensive Omada computer here. You're going to want to get this wrapped up and protected. I do not recommend putting this in your bike bag. People do open them. They do get checked at TSA or wherever. Small things like this are pretty easy to disappear, to fall out. I highly recommend our own Maratona Minimo. These side pockets are padded, anti-static, and lined with a microfiber that is safe for the plastic lenses of electronic devices, and also they're waterproof. So you kind of have all your bases covered there. Anti-static, waterproof, and anti-scratch. Okay, so we're kind of down to this point. Let's start actually taking the bike apart. Go ahead and start with your seat post. We're already loose on this guy, so we'll go ahead and get him off. All right, so we've got our seat post out, and in this case, our seat post has a battery in it. So we're going to want to make sure to get this guy nice and bubble wrapped up and protected. But then also we want to make sure to deal with our wires so that we're not losing him. So go ahead and leave him out of the frame for now, and we will deal with him when we start actually wrapping the tubes. Bottle cages. There's a lot of debate, or you will find a lot of debate, on whether to leave or remove the bottle cages. I always recommend removing them. They do take up quite a bit of extra width where the hubs end up on the wheels when the bike is packed finally. So particularly with some of the lighter weight carbon cages. It's possible to get some damage to the cage, but it's also possible to do a little bit of damage to the wheel. Something like these titanium cages are incredibly strong and stiff, and if the bike were to be impacted from the side, this could actually bend a spoke or do a little bit of cosmetic damage through the wheel bag to the wheel. So I always recommend taking these off just to be safe. It's a couple extra minutes, it's worth it. Another tip that I learned the hard way many years ago, always remove the lower water bottle screw first and then remove the top one. Otherwise, the thing might want to swing around and you could actually end up with a little bit of paint damage. I've seen that happen in the bike shop before, and that's never fun. So always remove the lower one first, and then when you go to reinstall, always install the top one first so that the bottle cage will naturally hang down. All right, where do you put accessories like bottle cages? I always recommend something like a shoe bag. This happens to be the shoe bag that comes with the SILCA Maratona Minimo, but you can find a shoe bag online. You can find them pretty inexpensively. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could buy, a 12-pack of these and use them for different components. So components in the shoe bag, and then all of your fasteners, I would use a Ziploc bag for those, and then roll it up and drop that in the shoe bag as well. And that way everything is contained and in one spot. You know that you can take a Sharpie and write on there cages, and that way it just helps you kind of systematize the process so you're not leaving any fasteners behind. I'd say that's probably the most common mistake that we see in the field are people who have lost a fastener, misplaced it. Maybe they're not sure if they left it at home or it's fallen out and been lost. But when you're building a bike in the hotel room or at the train station or wherever you may be, wherever you're going, it's nice to know that everything is in one place and labeled. It just speeds things up a bit. All right, next we're going to remove our rear wheel, and let's talk tire pressure. So you want to let a little air out of the tire, but leave enough in there to keep its shape. So when you're on the plane, they obviously pressurize the plane to an altitude that's higher than sea level. So if you're at sea level or below, and you've got a high pressure in the tire, as the plane climbs, that pressure is going to go up. Not a huge risk there, not nearly like it used to be 30 years ago. We'd see that. I think we'd see more problems there than today, but it's still a risk. So I would let a little out. You probably want it to be in the 20 to 30 psi range. Again, doesn't have to be too low. You want a little in there to protect against impact when the bike is traveling, just not so much that you're creating other problems. So with that, let's get our rear wheel out. All right, now we've got our wheel out, let's start talking about kind of the tips and tricks that we want to do to start managing this kind of this situation, right? We've hopefully cleaned our chain well, so we're not getting to be a super mess as we do this, but this is an area that we see a lot of travel damage. When people are traveling, the chain can slap at the chain stays. The derailleurs can be impacted, especially the newer Shimano designed derailleurs that hang further off the back. There's some risk in that. And so we kind of want to manage all of this rather carefully. And we are going to employ one of our travel secrets. So anyone who's ever been to the pool or the lake, or to a Target for that matter, knows that this is a pool noodle for kids. These things are awesome for packing up your bike because they're super cheap. They're relatively high density foam that's quite tough, and they are perfectly sized for really the rear triangle, front forks, and the bars on your bike. So I think we got these at the dollar store for something like $1 each. You just take your box knife, cut a slit, as we've done here, cut a slit through it, and then you can size them up specific to each tube and cut your own. So let's take our pool noodle and let's get to work. All right, so we've chosen green for the rear triangle. It just keeps things a little bit simpler. And so what I can do here is come in and just slide this guy down and over, kind of work him all the way in. You see he's already cut to length, and we're now protected on our chainstay the whole way down so that the chain's not going to slap at it or scratch it. So to hold him in place, we will employ super secret trick number 2. These are 12-inch cable ties, or Velcro cable ties that we found online. These I found at Amazon. I think it was $8.99 for a 24-pack. And these are typically what you would use to kind of clean up the cable mess from your computer under your desk. They're super cheap, they're reusable, and I really like that you can stick them together when you're not using. So you can hold this brick, peel from it, and then when you're unpacking the bike, you can just keep sticking them back down again. So you're not losing them, they're not laying all about. You're really keeping kind of a nice tidy workspace. So rip a couple of these off and let's get to work. So I want level crank arms or thereabouts, and I am going to go and I'm going to cable tie the chain to the big chain ring here. And that's going to do a couple things for us. This will help keep things from rotating, helps ensure that the chain stays pinned to the chain ring, top and bottom. It just eliminates the likelihood of the chain being able to slap about and cause some damage when it's in there. So we'll get one on the top, one on the bottom. So we're nice and stable in there. We'll go ahead and put a couple of ties on our pool noodle as well. I really like these things because unlike zip ties, which you have to cut off with like a wire snips or something when you get where you're going, these are really pretty infinitely reusable. And so you can carry extras in case you need them or you lose them, but you don't have to ruin it to cut them and break them off every time. Now, we also back here, we've got another Di2 wire. Again, let's get this guy out. We're going to want to keep him in a safe place when we definitely want to remove him from the derailleur as we start packing this end of the bike up. So I'm just going to keep him here for now. We can even tuck him under our little cable guy. Just want to make sure he doesn't get pulled or broken in any way. So these derailleurs are highly at risk in the bike bag, and it makes sense. This is typically the aftmost thing in the bag. If it's going to get hit on the end or hit from the side, there's a high likelihood that you can damage the rear derailleur. Trust me, it's not worth it, especially with these electronic rear derailleurs, which are super expensive. So we're going to want to go ahead and get him removed, wrapped up, and then we're going to kind of tie him up here to the bottom of the chainstay to keep him nice and protected in transit. So let's go. All right, so to deal with the rear derailleur, I've got some bubble wrap. Again, super inexpensive. You can find it online almost anywhere, any packaging store, any office supply store. A roll of this will go a long way, and it's surprisingly reusable. So let's go ahead and get our rear derailleur removed. Okay, and we want to keep him also nice and bundled up. If you want, you can put a tie kind of at the front of the chain here, but I like to take him and get one wrap, at least one wrap of bubble around the derailleur itself with the chain, and then get a second wrap this way and then we'll use our ties on them. do one tie around that way, and then I like to kind of pull everything up and cable tie him in between the chainstays where we know he's going to be the most protected. All right, other advantage of these Velcro ties is that you can make long ones by sticking them together. So here I've got the bulky part of my derailleur kind of hanging out. I'll just fish the one through the other, stick it together, and now I've got a much longer cable tie that I can wrap around the back. And then I will very loosely take my Di2 cable here and kind of tuck him right back in there, no tension on him, and just keep him all nice and snug. And then we'll just go one more wrap on that, just for good measure. Better safe than sorry, I think, in these situations. So, right, give me one on the chain up here. Again, it's nice that these so easily stick to themselves, so you can just kind of stack them together, and you've got this nice protected bundle here. This guy can't move. Everything else is on the inside and protected, and we're ready to continue breaking down. All right, so we've got our rear triangle all padded up. I've got some stuff on the fork legs here, which I want to do this, and I'm going to do the frame before we get to removing the bars, because once the bars come off, they're going to come and sit kind of sideways right up against the frame here. So we want to make sure we're protected on our fork legs and the frame as well. So get this done, and then we'll get to this at the last stage. So you have the option to do pool noodle. Can work on the frame tubes if they're the right size. For aero tubing, or in this case, like this down tube is quite large. It's bigger than I could find pipe insulation or pool noodle for. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a wrap of bubble. Here I've got 4 plies of bubble that we've got kind of set to the right length, and so we will just wrap this around and then tie it in place to get these tubes, and then we'll do a similar one over the head tube before we get to the bars. The pool noodle works great on the bars, but we need something different to protect the levers. And so for that, I typically would like double or triple up on a bubble wrap, and again, hold it in place with your zip ties. All right, we are padded up here and here, and now we are ready to go ahead and get the bar and stem off, and then swivel it down and begin the process of attaching that to the bike and kind of protecting to make sure that the bars don't hurt the bike doesn't hurt the bars, and then we want to keep our shift levers safe because those are super critical in this process. So we've got our bars mostly protected. I've left protection off of here, and we'll do that sort of selectively once we get it down. Get this off, and we determine how we're going to stick this up against the bike. You know, the goal here really is to protect the bars from the bike from the bars, and all of the components, not just from the outside world and the wheels and impacts that may come in, but we're also trying to protect from themselves. So some of the things we kind of puzzle piece together at the last minute. But let's get the bars off, and we'll see what kind of space and how everything fits together once it's down. All right, top cap is off. Let's go ahead and we'll get our stem pulled, and then we'll start to figure out how we want to get the bars aligned alongside the frame so that we can protect everything. Remember, the real goal here is to protect the paint, of course, but also to protect the components from each other, protect the paint and the frame from the components. And so there will be a place in every kind of bike packing where your particular length of cable and kind of other details are going to come into play, where what works on one bike may not work on every bike. So it becomes a little bit of a puzzle for this last step as we kind of place everything and then get it finally wrapped together before we go into the bag with it. Okay, this may look a little funny and a little backwards to what your bike's probably going to look like. If you noticed earlier, as some astute viewers might have, this bike is routed moto style or European style. So the brakes are backwards to what how your setup is probably routed. So we've got right brake controlling the front in this setup. Typically, if you're routed US style, right brake controlling the rear, my experience has been that the handlebars want to naturally kind of go to the non-drive side of the bike. But in this case, to get all of your cable runs straight, we've ended up on this side. So something a little bit different, but you can see now we've got the ability to tie the top of the bars to the top tube. We can contact nicely and pad this side of the bar to the fork, and we want to get this guy all protected and also make sure that our K-edge mount for our Omada cycling computer isn't in a place where it can do damage to the down tube of the bike, because that would be really bad to get where we're going and have some damage due to an accessory mount. You might want to take accessory mounts and things like that off if you're a little bit worried about it, or you can just take the extra precaution to pad and protect. In this case, we'll pad and protect. I think we'll be okay. Nice little extra last piece of foam we can cut and fit onto our K-edge mount here, just to give us that little bit of extra protection.
All of these modules are just shaping.
All right, and last but not least in this step, I've got my little piece of cardboard tubing that I've cut out of my IMPERO box. I'm going to slide him right over this way to protect the headset and the steer tube. So your particular setup may vary, but it's always nice to have something in this roll. To ensure that we're nice and snug. All right, so now we've got our bike completely wrapped and packed. Obviously, there's a couple areas that are a little bit exposed still. If you wanted, you could wrap towels, you can use bubble, you can use more pipe insulation or pool noodle if you want. I also tend to pack a lot of clothing in around the bike. The bike is clean. So you can pack stuff in around it when it's in the case. And so we're going to start with it from this point, and we're going to start packing up our case with the bike and all the tools. So this is the coolest feature of this Thule travel case that we've got. You'll see right now our work stand will convert into sort of this sled tray that will just drop and lock right into the bottom of the case. So here's what we do. We'll pull this guy off to loosen. The entire assembly comes off. And set this to the side. And then I will and we're locked. All right, so we've got the bike locked in the case, which was super easy, and now we've got our wheels and our accessories that we've been working with to pack. So I'm going to start with the wheels, which are in our awesome padded wheel bags here. And this is the way I do it. I'm not going to say it's the right way to do it, but it makes the most sense, and I've never had a problem with it. And that is to start with the rear wheel. Let me feel in my wheel bags here which one is the rear. That's the front. Okay, there's my rear wheel. I've got the cassette side here, and so the cassette is up against the kind of reinforced plastic disc that is inside the wheel bag. But just in case that were to get perforated or ripped or opened in transit, I want the cassette facing away from the bike so that it's not going to do any damage. And also, because the rear hub is wider and the way the spokes are triangulated, I want to place this wheel on the non-drive side with the cassette facing outward. So if you kind of can see here, I've got my wheel with the hub kind of in the main triangle where the cages would be. And this is why we've taken the cages out. The non-drive side of the rear hub, its protector is right here, okay? And then what that's going to allow us to do is take our front wheel and place our front wheel with its hub here in the rear triangle, also with its protector. We're just a little bit more busy on the drive side of the bike with the drivetrain right here. And so, like I said, I'm sure someone will disagree with that, but that's the way I've always done it. I've had great luck. I have had wheel bags ripped, things ripped on the inside, but all the stuff that's going to do the real damage ends up pointing outward when you set it up like this. Also, I love this stuff. This stuff you can find online, and we'll place a link to it. But it's from a company called AirSat in the UK, and it is kind of like a super industrial bubble wrap that you inflate yourself. So you buy it in a roll, you hook essentially a ball nozzle up on a pump to the end of it, and you can inflate these long tubes. And so what I do is I take it and I kind of build a bit of a protective zone around the hub at the rear triangle before I put my wheel in, like this. Now, before I even put that in, I'm going to do one more thing, and that's going to be to wrap up the pump that I'm using. So on this bike, we've got the frame pump, which we have in here. And you know, if this were my travel setup, I would be planning to use the frame pump as my primary pump, both on the bike and at the hotel room or the train station, wherever you're doing your inflation. But if you're not going to carry that, and a lot of people who are going on some of these long trips, it's nice to have a full-size frame pump. That's why SILCA, we make this the Viaggio portable floor pump with the digital Bluetooth gauge. So you've got a big, nice readout on your phone. It is a full-size, all-metal floor pump, and when you want to pack it up, you collapse the base. We'll loosen it here. The handle slides out. We'll lock it down. So it rolls into this tidy little package. We put it on our wax canvas case here, and then the Viaggio tool roll also has pockets for your pedal wrench, your hex keys, any other tools you may have. And then you've probably noticed throughout this video we've been using this guy for all of our disassembly. This is a T-ratchet with tie torque. The beauty of this guy, other than being a mini ratchet that's really quick to tighten and loosen bolts, he does have 2 through 8 Newton meter torque. And modern carbon bikes, titanium fasteners, aluminum fasteners, kind of the place where we are with the modern bicycle, you really need torque when you're reassembling this. Even on the road, it's super important. So, we recommend a torque tool of some kind. This one's super compact and portable and will roll right up into your Viaggio travel pump roll. So, put him in, I get my pedal wrench in there, and then you can see as we roll him up, he rolls into this nice little wax canvas tool roll, and we'll put this down in the case where I have, for this particular case, I've got two nice tie downs, loops in the bottom with Velcro straps, and so we tie him down to the bottom, and it's almost as if he's not there. So now that that's in its place, I'm going to go ahead and set or this is in its place. You can fit that guy in here too. You'll see. It's quite roomy. We can plan to put this one in. I'm going to go ahead and take my front wheel, again, get my padded side down, kind of line him up with the rear triangle, get my padding in place either side of the hub, and he loads up like that. So that's where how we're going to place the wheel there. I'll pull him so you can see it. The last thing I would put in would typically be my bottle cages and pedals, which are wrapped up in shoe bags within shoe bags, and also the seat post and saddle. Seat post and saddle ideally will fit in right here behind the saddle. This nice package fits right in here. All right, so we've got our saddle packed. Everything's ready for the wheel to go in. And one more thing, we got to stabilize our dropouts. Now, if you've got a through axle bike, you can just thread the through axle through and make sure that everything is just snug, but not too snug. That'll help protect this rear end from getting squished. This you can get at pretty much any bike shop. I've actually looked around. I can't find where you can buy them, but these come with bikes when they get shipped into the shops. You probably get it for free if you just go in and ask. It's a rear dropout protector, just a piece of plastic with some molded protrusions on it. And this guy just pops into the rear dropouts like this and protects in case of impact from being hit. The other option, if you can't find one of these, an old hub and a quick release skewer works well, or go to the hardware store, get a piece of 1/4 inch threaded all thread and some nuts and washers, and you can make your own. On track bikes, that probably actually works even better because the spacing, you're not going to find a track spaced rear axle protector at any bike shop. And then what I like to do is pack it and pad it with, maybe some shop towels, maybe some of your clothing for your trip. The shoe bags are great for clothes, t-shirts, other things. So you end up with kind of these little padded packages that you can use to kind of stuff around. So we'll get that in. Get my wheel bag in here. Load him up. See, everything is kind of nice and protected. And then we close him. And zip them down. So as this is here, this guy's somewhere right in that 42 pound range. So you've got about 8 to 10 pounds of additional stuff that you can pack in there. And so that really is where your additional padding that you want to strategically place can go. Additional clothes, other things you don't want to carry in your checked luggage or your carry-on luggage. The one thing we do recommend, don't pack your helmet in here because it is likely to get damaged or broken. Again, don't pack your electronics in here. They may fall out or disappear on you. And also remember that it is illegal to fly with CO2 cartridges. So if you've got a seat bag or a spares kit that has CO2 in there, any sort of compressed gas, make sure you keep it out or they will ding you for it. I have done it myself, and you always get the note from the TSA saying, don't do it again, we're watching you. So with that, we are now ready to travel. This and my Maratona Minima over here, and I have quite literally everything I need for about a week's worth of adventure on the road. I could probably push it to 10 days with this setup, and if I match this with the full-size Maratona, you could probably run this for anywhere in the 2 weeks time period with all the stuff we have right here. So I hope that helps, and we will put some links to all the products that we talk about, including the tips and tricks products down below at the end of this video. We hope it's been helpful.